Okay, so if you have the option, it's always best to put them on the ground, in my opinion. If I want to get up here and clean these, because pollen and dust buildup will absolutely reduce the generation.
Do you notice how clean ours are, Sean? We had cleaned ours not too long ago because we've had so much dust from the construction.
I noticed when I was touching just now that there was way less dust compared to right here.
He missed the spot. Well, that would be my question is, one of the things that we had you out here to do was kind of recommend what to do with these solar panels. Like, should we put them on the barn roof? And you kind of just answered that. Your recommendation is to have them on the ground.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then, you know, off grid, on grid, because we could take these off grid. Like, seeing what you have and what we've got going on, what's your recommendation?
You have the benefit of already having gone through the process of getting your system approved to be grid tied. Okay, that's an involved process. And you might even be lucky enough to still be getting the old rate, which is very generous compared to what the current rate is. Current rate is about 2 cents per kilowatt hour. Okay, it's essentially TVA's avoided generation costs. So they avoid, or they ignore transmission and distribution losses. That they ignore any of those other costs. It's literally at the generator what it costs to generate electricity. That's what they pay. Okay, so if you're grandfathered into an older system, I wouldn't take these off the grid. Now, what I would do is I would replace your grid tie inverter with a hybrid inverter that can allow for AC input and output and generator input and battery input. And the reason for that is you can use the system the way you're using it right now. And in the event that the storm comes through and takes those lines out, you just start operating off of the batteries, and you still get your daily. If it takes a week for them to get your lines fixed, every day you're still generating power, you're using it locally, you're storing it, and overnight you're using what you've stored. Okay, all of this infrastructure has been put in place because of what is required for it to go back onto the grid. So this inverter will not work with batteries. This inverter, it measures the incoming voltage from the grid, and if it's not grid power coming in, this turns off, which means none of this works. But if I replace this with a hybrid inverter, now it works whether the grid's on or off. I can program this to say, hey, when my batteries are down to 50% and it's later than 3 a.m., use a little grid power to top my batteries back up for me to maybe 80%. And then at 9 a.m. when the sun starts hitting these guys, it's going to take them back up. You can get really creative with monitoring your usage, monitoring your generation, and comparing that to your battery bank. And then you can program these hybrid inverters to, you know, hey, I never want my batteries to go below 50%, because if they're at 50% when the power goes out, I know I can at least get to tomorrow's sun or day after tomorrow's sun and charge my batteries back up. So that's what I would do with this system, is I would essentially add the flexibility. I would add the flexibility of being able to use the power from the grid if I need to, and use the power from this when the grid power is not available.
Awesome. What about our little box over there? Anything interesting about that?
This here?
Yeah.
Well, other than you're missing a blank, so you've got, let's see.
Is that 50 amp coming in from the?
Yeah, I would guess that this is your out to your inverter or to your generation meter, and this is probably the in. So I said that this has to be able to sense grid power. So that's what my guess is. And when you have a system that's connected to the grid, it's always nice to have multiple places to disconnect. Okay, so if I have a fire over there, I can come over and off and disconnect everything. If I have a fire over here, I can go over there, off and disconnect at that point. So my guess is that that's what this is. Oddly enough, there's no DC disconnect here. So this system would have been put in prior to National Electric Code 2014, I think, is when they actually started requiring a DC disconnect. So
Totally possible. Is that a good thing?
it's a thing. I
Okay.
wouldn't say good or bad. So these are not breakers. Okay, these are fuse holders. All right, if this fuse blows, you can open it up and you can replace the fuse. And what you would do if you were doing that is you would turn both of these breakers off so that you didn't have any incoming, and then you would pull this fuse right out of the top here, slide another one in there, and then close that up. So because they're working on the system, they essentially have all of the disconnects open. And when you're talking about electricity, and I'm not trying to insult anyone's intelligence, I just want to talk about what I'm talking about so that we're all speaking the same language. When we say open, that's like switch off. Okay, a circuit has to be closed in order for the electricity to flow. So open means off.
So yeah, looks like it's coming in from there, right?
Yeah. So this is in from the inverter, and then this is out to the system, to the generation meter. So
Good time to clean the panels when there's no power.
get some bees and stuff out of there. Yeah.
You were freaking me out just a little bit.